I look back over my life. What message do I want to leave? Each and every one of you has a role to play. Your life matters.
Jane Goodall was more than just a scientist. She was a dreamer, an explorer, and a woman who changed how humanity saw itself. Born in 1934 in London, she grew up fascinated by animals. While most girls her age played with dolls, Jane spent hours watching birds and insects in her backyard. That curiosity became the foundation of one of the greatest scientific journeys in history. When she arrived in Africa in 1960 with nothing but a notebook and binoculars, few believed she would achieve anything remarkable. But Jane's quiet determination would soon transform the world's understanding of animal behavior. In Gombe Stream National Park, she made discoveries that broke the boundaries between humans and animals. She found that chimpanzees make and use tools, something once believed to be unique to humans. She showed the world that animals have personalities, emotions, and social bonds. Her work didn't just add to science. It redefined it. Yet behind all the fame and admiration, there was another side of Jane's story. One not told in research papers or documentaries. It was a love story that began in the wild and ended with a painful but powerful decision. A decision that would change her life forever and reveal the true meaning of love, sacrifice, and purpose. Jane's life in Gombe was one of isolation and dedication. The forest was both her home and her classroom. She spent endless days observing chimpanzees, their play, their fights, their affection, and even their grief. Then, in 1962, National Geographic decided to capture her story for the world. They sent a young Dutch photographer named Hugo van Looijen to document her research. Jane didn't want anyone to disturb her work. She feared the chimpanzees would be frightened and her progress lost. But when Hugo arrived, everything changed. He wasn't just a photographer. He was a man who shared her deep love for nature. He saw the beauty and mystery in the same things Jane did. Their connection grew quickly, fueled by mutual respect and admiration. They began working side by side, Jane observing and Hugo capturing her findings through his camera. Together, they became a powerful team. His photographs brought her work to life, and her research gave his art meaning. Over time, their professional bond turned into love. In 1964, they married in London, beginning what many saw as the perfect union of heart and purpose. But while the world admired their romance, few realized that the same forces that brought them together, passion, purpose, and ambition, would also drive them apart. Jane and Hugo's life together was anything but ordinary. Their honeymoon wasn't spent in a cozy hotel or a quiet countryside house. It was back in the heart of Gombe, surrounded by chimpanzees, forest sounds, and adventure. They lived simply, sharing modest meals, working long hours, and finding joy in their shared mission. Their son, Hugo Eric Louis, affectionately nicknamed Grub, was born in 1967, bringing new light into their lives. Jane carried him on her back as she worked, just as chimpanzee mothers carried their young. It was a rare picture of family and science coexisting in harmony. Yet, isolation has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. While Jane loved the stillness and purpose of Gombe, Hugo was a man of movement. His career as a wildlife filmmaker took him to new locations, new challenges, and new stories. Their paths slowly began to diverge. Jane stayed rooted in Gombe, while Hugo was called to the vast plains of the Serengeti and beyond. What began as shared dreams started to feel like separate worlds. The letters they exchanged became less frequent, and the time they spent together grew shorter. The forest that had once united them was now the very thing pulling them apart. By the early 1970s, Jane Goodall and Hugo van Looijen had become symbols of harmony between love and discovery. To the outside world, they were the golden couple of science, to people devoted to understanding life in the wild. But behind the perfect image, their relationship was quietly changing. National Geographic had ended its funding for Hugo's work at Gombe, and he was offered new projects across Africa. Jane, however, could not leave. Gombe wasn't just a research site anymore. It was her life's work. She had watched generations of chimpanzees grow and form families. Leaving them behind would mean abandoning her purpose. "I couldn't leave Gombe," she later said simply. "I had to stay." Those few words carried the weight of her heartbreak. The woman who had given so much to science was now forced to choose between love and duty. Hugo's letters from his new assignments were full of excitement, while Jane's journals became more reflective. She wrote of loneliness, of nights spent listening to the forest sounds without him. Their marriage had been built in the wilderness, but now that same wilderness was quietly claiming them back. They still cared for each other deeply, but their lives were heading in different directions, and both of them knew it. In 1974, Jane and Hugo officially divorced. It was not a dramatic breakup or a story of betrayal. It was a peaceful but painful ending. They both knew the marriage had already faded into friendship and respect. To many, it seemed simple. Distance had destroyed their love. But for Jane, the truth went deeper. She later explained, "He had to go on with his career, and I couldn't leave Gombe." It wasn't anger or regret that ended their marriage. It was a difference in destiny. For Hugo, the Serengeti called with new opportunities and untold stories. For Jane, the chimpanzees were her family, her life's calling. Leaving them was never an option. She once said, "I definitely wish we could have carried on with that marriage because it was a good one." That quiet reflection showed how much she valued what they shared. But Jane understood something most people never do, that love sometimes means letting go. Her devotion to Gombe wasn't a rejection of love, but a different expression of it. She loved deeply, but she loved her purpose even more. And in that choice lay the true strength of her character. She didn't see herself as a woman who lost her husband. She saw herself as a guardian who had chosen to protect a world that couldn't protect itself. For decades, people have speculated about why Jane Goodall's first marriage ended. Some believed distance was the main reason. Others thought fame and work pressure played a role. But in her later interviews, Jane hinted at something more profound, something that truly explains the breakup. The real reason Jane Goodall divorced her husband was not because of conflict or betrayal. It was because of destiny. She once said, "He was so driven. That's what made me fall for him first. But it was also what tore us apart." Hugo's passion pushed him to explore the world, while Jane's mission anchored her to Gombe. They were both right in their choices, yet their paths no longer aligned. Jane didn't leave Hugo for another person. She left him for a purpose greater than herself. Her work wasn't just a job, it was her moral duty. She believed the chimpanzees deserved protection, that her years of research couldn't end because of human limitations. In her own words, "We did the right thing. We kind of had to do it." That sentence summed up her entire philosophy. It wasn't about giving up on love, it was about understanding what love truly means. Jane's greatest act of love was not holding on, but knowing when to let go. By choosing her mission over marriage, she proved that devotion doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes means continuing alone. After her divorce, Jane didn't give up on life or happiness. Her work continued, and her fame grew even more. In the mid-1970s, fate introduced her to Derek Bryson, the director of Tanzania's national parks. He was strong, confident, and deeply passionate about wildlife protection. At first, Jane was intimidated by him. She had heard he was tough and unsympathetic. But when they finally met, she saw another side of him, a man who cared deeply for nature and shared her vision. Their professional respect soon turned into affection. In 1975, they married quietly. This marriage was very different from her first. It wasn't built on adventure or shared fieldwork. It was built on understanding and stability. Derek used his influence to protect Gombe, ensuring that Jane's research site remained safe from tourism and interference. But tragedy struck once again. Only 5 years later, Derek was diagnosed with cancer and passed away in 1980. Jane was heartbroken but grateful. She often said that if she hadn't married Derek, Gombe might not exist today. Just as Hugo helped her bring her work to the world, Derek helped her preserve it. Both men had shaped her life's mission in different ways. One, as the spark that began it. The other, as the shield that protected it. After Derek's death, Jane never remarried. When asked why, she answered with quiet honesty, "I didn't meet the right person, I suppose." My life was complete. Her words carried no sadness, only peace. By then, her true lifelong companion wasn't a person, it was Gombe itself. The forest, the chimpanzees, and the mission she had devoted her life to became her family. Over the decades, she became one of the world's most respected voices for conservation. Even in her later years, she continued to travel, speak, and inspire millions with her message that every person can make a difference, and every life has meaning. Jane Goodall's story is not just about science, it's about purpose, love, and sacrifice. After losing Derek Bryson, Jane Goodall found herself once again standing alone, but this time, her solitude was not sorrowful. It was peaceful. She had faced loss before, yet every ending in her life had led to new beginnings. The forest became her place of healing. The trees, the rivers, the calls of the chimpanzees, they all seemed to speak to her in a language of comfort. She often said, "In the stillness of nature, I feel connected to something greater than myself." While many might see loneliness as emptiness, Jane saw it as clarity. The long nights in Gombe taught her patience. The quiet mornings reminded her that peace doesn't always come from people. Sometimes it comes from purpose. Her deep connection with nature helped her understand herself in ways that few ever do. She didn't escape from the world. She embraced it more fully through the wild. She learned that you can lose people and still find love in the rustle of leaves, the laughter of chimpanzee infants, and the rhythm of life that continues no matter what. This inner peace gave her strength to move forward, not as a widow or a scientist, but as a messenger of hope. By the mid-1980s, Jane had already built a lifetime's worth of research, but she began to realize something unsettling. While her work revealed the beauty of chimpanzees, their survival was under threat. Deforestation, hunting, and habitat loss were destroying the forests faster than scientists could study them. The animals she had spent her life protecting were disappearing. That realization changed her path once again. Jane decided to leave the forest, the very place she had sworn never to leave, so she could speak to the world. It wasn't an easy choice. She once said, "I had to give up the life I loved to try to save it." For decades, she had been a quiet observer, but now she became an active advocate. She traveled constantly, giving talks, meeting leaders, and spreading awareness about conservation. Her message was simple but powerful. Every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play. Every individual makes a difference. People from all walks of life, students, scientists, activists, were drawn to her sincerity. She spoke not as a celebrity but as a friend of the earth, urging humanity to act before it was too late. Her voice became a bridge between humans and nature, showing that protecting the planet was not just a duty but an act of love. In 1991, during one of her speaking tours, Jane visited a school in Tanzania and met a group of young people who were frustrated and hopeless. They told her they felt powerless against pollution, poverty, and cruelty toward animals. Jane listened quietly, then asked, "Why don't we do something about it together?" That simple moment gave birth to one of her greatest legacies, the Roots and Shoots program. What started with a small group of students soon grew into a global movement for youth-led change. Today, Roots and Shoots operates in more than 100 countries, empowering young people to take action for the environment, animals, and human communities. Jane often said this program gave her the greatest joy in her later years because it proved that hope was still alive. She believed that change begins in the heart of every person. When young people understand that what they do makes a difference, she said, they can change the world. Through Roots and Shoots, millions of children planted trees, cleaned rivers, and protected wildlife. Her vision of compassion had turned into a living, breathing force for good, a generation inspired not by fear, but by love. Despite her global fame and countless awards, Jane faced criticism from some parts of the scientific community. Many researchers thought she was too emotional or unscientific, because she named her chimpanzees and spoke of their personalities. In the early years, her findings were even questioned because she didn't have a formal scientific degree when she began. But Jane didn't let criticism shake her. She simply smiled and said, If you spend enough time observing them, you will see for yourself. Eventually, her work proved so groundbreaking